All right, I'm with Holly Lyne. Holly, let's just start off with you talking about your amazing podcast.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's tell us about your podcast.
So
I want to start
I
there.
I host the Writer Roadmap podcast, which I started when my former podcast, Unstoppable Authors, wrapped up, and I didn't want to give up podcasting because I love it so much. But people have limited time, right? And
Hmm.
there are so many podcasts to listen to. And I thought, what can I offer that's a bit different? So all of my episodes are under 10 minutes long, and they're just a sort of microdose of motivation midweek to help
Yeah, it's
people.
like a shot in the arm of encouragement in the middle of
Yeah,
the week. It's really nice.
exactly.
Yeah,
And I
yep,
try to keep it really upbeat and deliver some helpful information, but mainly it's just about encouraging people to keep going and to find their own path on the
nice.
journey.
I love it. Um, yeah, I listen and I really enjoy it. So I just wanted to kick off with that. All right,
Thanks.
talk to us about where you are in your author journey.
So I just had my 10th anniversary. I've been writing and publishing for 10 years, and
Congratulations. Did you do something to
thank you.
celebrate?
Not really. Like it kind
Ah,
of crept up on me because it was like
yeah.
New Year. So I suppose I celebrated with New Year's Eve,
Hmm.
right? Um,
That works. We'll call this year's New Year's Eve Holly's 10-year anniversary. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and just the industry has changed so much in that time. I've seen it all. I've seen the gold rush and I've seen just where things are at now. And I'm actually sort of pivoting. So I'm shifting my genre slightly and going in a new direction. Um, and really trying to double down on the things that make my stories unique and special. Um, and I think that's like the only way to be seen these days, right? Is to
Yeah.
like really go all in on what makes our stories the best. So
Yeah. So what can we probe that for a minute? I
yeah,
didn't
sure.
expect you to say that, but I just want to sit in it for a second. What first triggered that change for you?
It's been a really hard couple of years.
Okay.
I've had recurring burnout since sort of early 2021. Um, not really been able to write, not been able to finish things. I sort of made myself finish and publish something in the autumn of 2022, but hadn't finished or published anything since then. Last
Mm,
year was really lean, really dry creatively.
mm,
And I just like I want to love writing again. I want to love love what I do, and I wasn't.
yeah.
So yeah, so I needed to just figure out what I really wanted to get from this and
Mm,
what stories I wanted to tell. And then I got slapped in the face with some inspiration for like villain retellings. And it was like all of a sudden I had about 8 stories pop into my head, and I was like, oh, right, okay.
that's funny. Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, so that's the direction I'm going in. So kind of away from I've been writing urban fantasy,
Yeah.
but it's just so hard to find readers in that genre now because everyone wants romance.
Mhm.
And everyone thinks that urban fantasy is the same as paranormal romance, and it's
Mm,
not.
yeah.
And I was writing urban fantasy, not paranormal romance. So I
Mhm.
I don't do happy endings. That's
Yeah.
just not where my
Not where
brain
you go.
goes.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say the qualities of your writing are that you're leaning into now?
So it's that not so my tagline for my fantasy my villain retellings is not every fairy tale has a happily ever after.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Um, so I'm leaning into the dark fantasy elements and the tropes that I love and adore, which are the chosen one, the yeah, bittersweet ending,
Mm,
self-sacrifice,
yeah.
anti-heroes. Like,
Nice. That's
yeah.
great. I love it. That's fantastic. Um, and I love that. I think the changes, it sounds super healthy and like you're headed in a good direction. So that's exciting. Um, okay, let's talk about your piece.
Mm-hmm.
I have to always have to figure out how to share my screen because it's not like I do this like 10 times a day. All right, there we go. Um, so this is Cloak and Fang. chapter
Hmm.
one. Talk to me about, I loved it. I think it's really great. It starts with a huge bang. Your character voice is good. Um, I think it's really strong. So my notes are more about kind of taking it to the next level.
Hmm.
Talk to me about what you like about this lead character.
So Scarlet Wilder is my lead character, and she's Red Riding Hood, basically.
Okay,
Um, it's a Red Riding Hood retelling.
nice.
Um, and she is like she's feisty, she's really contained. She doesn't
Mm,
share easily. She's very guarded because she's been through some pretty awful things in her life.
okay.
Um, so yeah, she's and I noticed a lot of your notes were like, she needs to say more here. It's like, yeah, but she doesn't. That's like who
Yeah,
she is.
yeah, let's talk about what that needs to look like.
Okay.
So she's guarded because she's had these traumas.
Hmm.
There's a couple reasons that people don't talk. One is they're trying to like keep moving so fast that they can't feel it,
Hmm.
so they never look back.
Hmm.
Another is that there's a kind of like, this is nobody's business but mine. There's
Hmm.
another, so there's like an anger base to it. There's another that's like an anxiety. Well, I guess the moving so fast would be the anxiety base. The anger base would be like, this is it. How dare you ask me about that? That's my past. It's got nothing to do with you. Then there's kind of a shame and embarrassment base that's like, I don't want people to realize this about me.
Mm.
Which of those is Scarlet living in?
Um, it's no one's business.
Okay, it's the anger base.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, not full on anger, but just that containment, I
yeah,
guess. Just
yeah.
yeah,
This is mine. Don't touch it. Okay.
yeah.
So what I think would take this piece to the next level is more perspective.
Hmm.
I want more from Scarlet. Is this a single POV
Hmm.
story? Yeah. So I think we need more from her. Um,
Okay.
and then the other thing I want to talk to you about is concussions. Have you ever had a concussion?
A mild one, yeah.
Okay. So her seems right now, and I'm gonna do this early, Holly, because I want to, as we go through how we talk about her perspective, the level of concussion she has is gonna matter.
Hmm.
So like, you know, she has a building fall on her at the very start of the piece,
Hmm.
and is in the hospital with a concussion. Some things were missing from the concussion. Um, that you'd kind of expect to see are like a sensitivity to bright lights, a sensitivity to noises or to sound, um, confusion when somebody speaks too much.
Hmm.
Um, you have a little bit of nauseousness, but not a lot. She doesn't like throw up.
Hmm.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
can I let you in on a secret?
yeah, please
She
do.
doesn't really have a concussion.
Okay,
So that's what the doctor has decided she has based
okay,
on her memory loss. Um, but spoiler alert, she she knocked the building down.
gotcha. I kind of get that at the end. Okay,
Okay.
so not
Okay.
really a concussion.
Yeah.
All right. Um, then I want to add a place here where she talks about how she doesn't, where she pushes back on the staff about
Hmm.
what she has, because we need to. So the thing is, we need to make it clear to the reader what's happening. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
Now she's guarded. Right now, she's guarded with everyone, including the reader.
Mm.
How do you feel about making her less guarded with the reader?
Um, yeah, and I know I need to do that,
Okay.
but it's tricky because there's a big twist and I don't want to give it away too soon.
Yeah.
So it's and she genuinely doesn't remember.
Yeah.
She has real memory loss. She's going through, let's call it a transition.
Yeah.
Um
That's fair. Totally fair.
and
Um,
Yeah.
transition that's going to change her personality in the book?
Yeah.
Is she going to
Yeah.
become a different person? What's
Yeah.
she moving from and to?
So she's becoming a werewolf.
Yeah, I figured that, but like personality wise, how does
Um,
becoming a werewolf change her characterization?
she's gonna go from fairly, although she's quite tough, she's not aggressive really. She's
Okay.
quite, and she has normal ambitions.
Okay.
Um, but she's gonna become a hunter.
Okay. So we're moving from guarded and a little passive, a little wandering in life to
Hmm.
aggressive and kind of taking control of our own destiny, that
Yeah.
hunter prototype. Okay, great.
Hmm.
So I'm asking all those questions because this is a first chapter. We
Hmm.
want to establish that like the part of her that we're leaving behind in
Mm.
the book, we want to really like stick our finger into that
Hmm.
because we want to feel it when it goes away. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So it's a
Yeah.
bigger transition. So let's talk through the piece and talk about places that we can do that and add that in. Um, excuse me one second. I have to cough and I don't want to do that in the microphone. Um, but I can't find my Zoom button. It's terrible. There we go. Sorry, it's cold season where I am, so I always
Hmm.
get like raspy. All right. You've got a great opening paragraph here. Dust rained down like slow, blinding me and coating my throat. I blinked away specks clinging to my lashes, and a hacking cough clawed its way up to my chest. I doubled over onto all fours as a coughing fit seized me. I shook uncontrollably, tears streaming from my eyes, and my throat burned. Fantastic opening, like physicality. Like here's how she feels physically.
Hmm.
I to take it to the next step, I need the emotional impact too.
Hmm.
And here specifically, we don't really figure out that she doesn't know where and who she is for another couple paragraphs.
Mm.
So here specifically, I want some like, where am I? What's happening? What's going on? Like lay it for me out right at the beginning to let me know like she is as lost as the reader is.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we want to bring us into that, bring the reader into her emotional state here and really like hit us with like you and I, meaning Scarlet and I, we have no idea where we are. We
Hmm.
have no idea what's going on. This is the opening scene on purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. You feel okay about that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. You then have a pivot here, and I know why you need the pivot because we have to get her out of like hacking and coughing. So you got gradually the coughing eased, and I was able to sit back on my heels and gather my wits. My heart pounded, and I raised the tentative hand to my back. Again, we're being very like physical.
Hmm.
Something wet and sticky clung to my hair. Bleary, I withdrew my hand and looked down at the shining red on my fingers. I looked past my own shaking, dimly noises around me, groaning, scraping sounds. My vision was blurred, and there was very little light. Wherever I was in danger, and that was obvious. So again, here first, I need some reason that the coughing is easing, and it could be the dust is clearing,
Hmm.
right? The initial explosion is passing away. It could be that she feels like she's getting a gauge in her surroundings. Whatever reason the coughing is easing needs to match her emotional state as well,
Hmm.
because you've paralleled her physical and her emotional,
Hmm.
right? Physical is in chaos. We need emotional in like lost chaos.
Hmm.
Physical starts to come together, emotional starts to come together, and here you're starting to pull her emotional together. I was in danger. That was obvious. So that she's starting to get some surroundings.
Hmm.
I just want more. I want more grounding here. Um, Especially when you're starting with this big a swing, right? Like this big and emotional pop, which I love, and I think it's great for dark fantasy. Um, we need to let the reader know it's on purpose.
Hmm.
And like we're doing this for a reason. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, talking to you, it is always just like a light bulb.
Well, I have the advantage of looking at this after you write it. It's always
Yeah.
easier to come after somebody does something and be like, let me play critic here for a minute. Yeah, so yeah, what is the quote? It's not the one who sits in the stands but the man in the arena. In
Yeah.
this instance, you're the one in the arena, and I just get to be like, well, if you did this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that comment that I'm making about her emotional connection is going to go all the way through. But now that I know more who you want her to be, when we get to the conversation with the healthcare professionals, we're going to change it a little bit and make her
Okay.
a little harder with them.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so here we have this paragraph where she's getting a couple paragraphs where she's getting better. She's starting to realize that she's missing people. Um, and then she kind of fades here again. Somewhere far away, sirens cut through the haze. I stayed where I was, frozen in the dust and the rubble, collapsed building, until sirens were deafening and blue and red lights flickered through the gaps in the concrete around me. Describe to me where, and I know she doesn't know,
Hmm.
but describe to me where she is physically in the fall of this building. Is
So
she outside of
she's
it?
on the ground floor inside.
Inside. So are they like
Yeah.
moving things to get to her?
Um, yeah, and the building is still kind of bits of it are still falling. Like,
Okay.
that sort of the main collapse has happened, but obviously there's sort of gonna be like a ripple effect, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
Bits of tile keep falling and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
that's like the noises that she can hear, the groaning of the remaining parts of the structure that are under a lot of pressure
Gotcha. And I
and
don't know that we want to get into that with her because she doesn't know that. Does that make
mm,
sense? Like perspective is super important here.
hmm.
There's a thing though about the lights cutting. The reason I ask is because if she's buried, we need to make darkness more at the beginning.
Mm,
Because what I mean is here the lights and sirens cut through the haze. She seems to be outside
okay.
when she sees the lights.
Yeah. I mean, there's a wall that's come down, like an exterior wall. So that's
Okay, but it hasn't come down like blocking her in. It's come down to where
no.
she can like see outside.
Yeah, or
Okay.
pa like partially, yeah.
Okay. Um, I think this works then. I'm just double checking. Part of me was like, huh, I wonder where she is. I don't know that a reader will have a problem with it, but I wanted to make sure that if she was covered, that we had the feeling of people removing things above her. But I get that she's not covered, so I think it works
Mm,
great.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so this is some kind of transition here. And part of it is I think I'm missing emotional context again.
Hmm.
Um, But the transition here felt hard. Collapsing building until the sirens, deafening blue and red lights flickered through the gaps in the concrete around me. I must have lost consciousness. And again, here's that like this paragraph. I might add some more physical. Now that I read it again, Holly, I might put some more,
Hmm.
just another sentence of what she's seeing,
Hmm.
because it's this line, the gaps in the concrete around me that make me think she's buried.
Mm,
Does
okay.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe something, I love the line.
Hmm.
So maybe just a little more here about what she's seeing.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm sort of imagining like she is surrounded by rubble and concrete, but not like immediately. It's like
yeah,
feet
it's
away,
all
you
around.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like in an open space.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I don't know. There's a weird balance in these disaster scenes. There's a weird balance where you're kind of balancing three things. You're balancing her physical response to what's happening, and that in these disaster scenes, that needs to take priority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you are crushing that, right? Like I think the best one of these I've read, oh man, I'm gonna screw up the name. Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. There's a bomb that goes off in a museum
Right.
and a kid feels it, and when it goes off, um, he loses all context for where he is. And she does a great job of it.
Mm-hmm.
But your balance, and you're doing a really good job of it here too, the physicality of it. That second thing and second priority has to be the emotional mental response, like the inner response of the character, and that's what I want more of.
Hmm.
That third thing is the like physical surroundings, like what they actually see and hear.
Yeah.
And you're doing a good job of keeping that the lowest priority because it brings the reader into her confusion. And that's why I'm struggling here when we start to like pull it together.
Mm,
Um, is that last piece needs to start to exaggerate.
mm,
And it'll give the feeling of like she's coming back around. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't actually have any help for you there. I'm just describing weird things that I've seen and saying, here's the mess that I'm leaving you. Have fun with it. Yeah, so take all of that. And
Thanks.
yeah, go be writer. So you're welcome. Uh yeah, we and that's I so sorry, I do actually have something productive to say. As we move into this, her coming back around and actually talking to somebody, we need to start shifting that from the confusion of how she's physically feeling to start bringing in more of that, what she's seeing around her. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? So that we're
Yeah.
starting to like accelerate those two things. Um, this is good. I liked the getting her name in there. Where's Finn? Were you here? Oliver. This is all great. Um, I did a space down here. Just I know this isn't technically grammatically correct, but you had this line, okay, Scarlet, we're looking for them now. We need to get you to the hospital. Before I could object, I was being wheeled out from the rubble. As I looked around, I discovered that I'd already been moved from where I found myself. So this is that like that's her interaction in a conversation.
Mhm.
And so I'm gonna treat it like she's talking, even though she's not. But
Okay.
I'm pointing it out because I made this change in your manuscript, and um, it's technically grammatically incorrect. But I like it, so I'm gonna do it to you every time. Yeah. So here's where I want to recenter. We get into this conversation with paramedics and with her dead boyfriend's brother.
Hmm.
Um, and here's where I need you to start kind of shifting her emotional state and really focusing in on this conversation. And I know you said this was a first draft, so I
Yeah.
feel bad being picky on your first draft, but that's what you get for sending me a really good first draft. So, um, yeah, so she says, or sorry, the paramedic says, "Sir, I need you to step back." A man's voice stated calmly from behind me. The paramedic wheeling me into the ambulance, raised the level of chest and rushed over. I blinked and looked up into the terrified face of ambulance. How Elliot Hammond, Finn's eldest brother. Sentence about how that makes her feel,
Hmm.
right? Because she's guarded and closed, but not to the reader. So sentence about how this makes her feel. Um,
Hmm.
Especially since you're in first person, right? Like the gift of first person is that we get more of her perspective.
Yeah.
So she's searching up here for Finn. She wants to know where Finn is, and Elliot appears. Does she expect Elliot to be there? Is she
Mm-hmm.
surprised that Elliot is there? Is she hopeful that maybe Elliot's found Finn? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Elliot's first line is, I'm the developer. So that's an odd way. His brother's missing, his brother's girlfriend, the building fell down. His job is a weird way to identify himself first.
Like, yeah, I think it's just, I mean, I wanted to get that information in there, but it feels like that if you're being told by someone in a position of authority, like you can't be here, but you feel justified in being there. A, yes, because your brothers are in the building, but B, it's your building. Like,
Okay.
he's like announcing himself. No, 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 this is my building. Like, I'm in charge. I need
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be here.
So that's what I want.
Okay.
I want the like, no, no, this is my building.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this, I'm here. It's the title that's weird. The developer. It's like developer of what? So yeah, I want
Okay.
that. Like, do developers have special privileges in your world? So that like, no, no, this is my building. Like I own this place. And then immediately snapping to my brothers are in there. Where are they? Are they already on their way to the hospital? Is Scarlet all right? These are all great. Um, her brain here is still in slow motion. Again, she doesn't have a concussion, so I don't know that I'd go deeper into that. But
Mm,
originally I was going to make you be like, let's talk about concussion, but you don't have that. She loses urgency here. She's like, I'm okay. I said, reaching my hands toward him. There's should be like a searching for Finn,
mm,
or right? Like
yeah.
should be some kind of urgency. You give her urgency up here, looking for Finn and Oliver. I need that to stay, right? Like Elliot doesn't represent peacefulness for her. Elliot represents a like increased of urgency. He doesn't
Mm,
know where Finn is either, right? Like so there needs to be a what's her relationship with Finn? Is it positive?
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, she definitely needs to be looking for Finn. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Hmm.
So I might edit this line a little bit and have her again restate Finn, and I might add some desperation to it. So like I'm
Mm,
okay. I said reaching my hands toward him. I haven't seen Finn. I don't know where Finn is.
mm,
And have her like maybe give her a cough here again, reminding
mm,
us that she's like struggling, or let her like voice catch in her throat. You might hint here that there's something missing,
mm,
right? Like from her memories. Like I'm okay. I said reaching my hands toward him. Where's Finn? I haven't been able to find Finn. There's a block in my brain. I couldn't push past it. Why
hmm,
couldn't I push past it? Where is he? Like creating that kind of urgency in her to push past this moment. Does that make
hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
And it'll play well because it'll go into the doctor saying she has a concussion, not able to remember the moment. Um, but just increasing her urgency here a little bit,
Mm,
I think would be good. Um, okay, so this was all great. She gets to the doctor. Hours passed in a blur. There was no bedside. Perfect time for a summary, by the way.
hmm,
The transition into the hospital. I don't need to see all those moments. You summarize it here for me in a really good way that keeps the kind of like rapid pace of what's happening without bogging me down in weird details. So
mm.
I thought your transition here was really good.
Oh, thank you.
Um, Hours passed in a blur. There was no one beside my bed, no family to call. Tears stained my cheeks. Eventually, a kind Asian doctor with hair in a bun was
That should be patting.
patting
Sorry.
my shoulder. Yeah.
Typo.
As I read it, I was like, I read it as patting the first time. Um, why Asian?
I don't know.
Okay.
It was just a detail. Just a, you know,
It's not a
it's
bad
not
detail, but I would avoid using race as random details unless they matter.
sure.
And that may just be the American in me being
Yeah,
like,
it's
race, danger, danger. So, like, I know that other cultures don't have the same weird history of hangups that we have caused. So, but anytime I see that, my American alarms go off. So yeah, just
I live in like near a city in the UK that has a huge Asian, particularly Pakistani population, and about 90% of our doctors are Asian. So it was just like
yeah,
that's
it's just how
just
you see a doctor.
that's
Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah,
but
and
it is a stereotype.
it
So
is a
like
stereotype. Yeah,
yeah,
and
I
it's
should it
you know,
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the story, so maybe I should just cut it
it
out.
doesn't matter the story. This character's probably not coming back.
No.
We're never going to see her again. So it doesn't actually matter what her race is.
No.
And there is like my fear is always the last thing I ever want to do is empower somebody to go like, oh, of course the doctor's Asian. Like, oh no, I don't want to do that. So like I just recommend taking you don't need the detail.
Okay.
Kindly faced doctor with their hair in a bun is plenty.
Okay.
Um, let the reader make the image of the doctor that they want to make because it doesn't
Mm,
matter.
hmm.
So this is where I need more. And I just need more exchanges to
Hmm.
emphasize the confusion and the like her emotional state.
Mm,
That makes sense.
yeah.
So it would look something like, just seems to be a concussion. You were very lucky. She says, and the others, I'd give her more urgency. Like, and the others, Finn, Oliver, that's a more controlled emotional response
Mm,
because of the complexity of this sentence.
mm,
So I'd be like, what about Finn? Where's Finn? Where's
mm,
Oliver? And then she'll say, like, I can see if I can find out. Um, you might want to have here some kind of introduction to who she is, right? Like that's might be
mm.
something I add. Hi, I'm Dr. So and so. Looks like you had a pretty rough
Yeah.
fall.
I think, I mean, in my head, this isn't their first interaction, so I maybe need to specify that.
Mm.
She's already been in the hospital for hours. She'd have seen the doctor before.
Yeah, I think part of it is, again, we're tracking with her emotional presence.
Mm,
So because this is the first time she's had a conversation, remember, we're still here.
mm,
We're still in the fall of the building and the smoke and the chaos. You've summarized moving her forward in time,
mm.
but we're still in that emotional state of desperation.
Yeah.
So if you want her out of that and this hours passed in a blur, tears stain my cheeks, we need some kind of sentence about medical professionals came and went.
Hmm.
Finally leaving me, maybe some like medical professionals came and went, each one with more concern but no information, leaving me in a state of blank.
Hmm.
And that would summarize bringing me to her emotional state here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this would like, and then it'd be like eventually, and instead of a kind faced doctor, I would say eventually the kind faced doctor who'd been caring for me
Mm,
was patting my shoulder, right? Like, so just to like let me know, like, hey, I know this person not well, but I've seen her before.
hmm.
Yeah. Um, how does that feel?
Yeah, no, you're completely right. That makes sense.
Yeah, and just I think, but if you do that, if you give me that bigger transition, then this works great.
Hmm.
Um, because she's in a different emotional spot.
Hmm.
I think the man approaching, he's coming back, right? This cleric in a collar.
And she hasn't seen him before.
Yeah, but he's coming back in the story.
Oh, he comes back
Yeah, yeah.
later.
Anytime I see a priest in an urban fantasy, I'm like, all right, they're coming. This is an important character. Um, Here I want a little more between the two of them because it is their first interactions. You have a shrugged and ominous feeling about his presence. Great. He drew a curtain around the end of the bed. Perfect. And sat down on the lone chair of the room. Perfect. Like very ominous. My name's Mike. I've been asked to come and talk to you about what happened. Then you had, right. My voice was still hoarse and I couldn't muster much of a scotch. The consultant wants to keep you um until its afternoon observation, but she thinks she'll be fine. Is there anyone who can help you call? So we get usually when a priest, a chaplain, anybody sits down with you, there's signposting,
Hmm.
meaning they're going to take the anxiety out of the conversation,
Hmm.
especially since this seems to be at this moment kind of a villainous character. We want to make him a little smarter about what he's doing. So
Okay.
he needs to set up kind of an agenda in a compassionate way for the
Hmm.
conversation. So my name's Mike. I've been asked to come and talk to you with what happened. She can sit in silence and just look at him, disturbed by the feeling of who he is, or she can, respond like, nice to meet you, or, do you have any information about my boyfriend? And then that would be a nice foreboding for what he's going
Hmm.
to tell her. Like, do you have any information about the boys? I was with two guys, Finn and Oliver. Have you heard anything? And then he needs to say something like, they asked me to come and talk to you because you've been through a traumatic experience.
Hmm.
That's that signposting. Like, here's why I'm here. Here's what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And it sets the tone for the conversation between them.
Yeah.
And then she needs to reply, maybe ask who he is again. I'm sorry. Who are you again? He doesn't necessarily need to answer.
Hmm.
Um, Once he's signposted, then he can drop this line, I understand you have no family. So, but he needs to give a reason for that line.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it might look like, hi, my name's Mike. I've been asked to come and talk to you about what happened. Wait for her response. Okay, have you seen Finn? Do you know Oliver here? Yeah, I'm here because you've had a traumatic experience and they wanted me to talk to you about next steps. She could say like, okay, who are you again? And he can be like, I was looking through your file and I understand there's no family to call to come and get you. Right?
Hmm.
Like so see how that makes him feel a little different, a little more professional.
Hmm.
If you don't want to go the professional route with him and you want to go the more compassionate route with him, the like
Mm.
because I'm assuming he's evil. I always assume in urban fantasies that priests
No.
are evil. He's not.
No,
Okay.
no, no, he's not evil. He's trying to help her.
Okay.
Um, and eventually later in the book he's gonna figure out what's going on with her.
What's going on? How do you want her to feel about him? Does she feel like he's evil? Does she feel like he's helpful?
Um,
Does she feel
she
like he's
probably
annoying?
doesn't entirely trust him, but
Okay.
understands that he's there to do a job.
Okay. Great. So we can go the professional route that and make it a little more therapy-ish
Hmm.
from him, like professional doctor therapy-ish. The other way to go is to go super empathetic because right now he's not coming off as empathetic. He's coming off
Mm.
as like, I care, but I'm also trying to get you out of the hospital. So you may want to take him the other direction of like, hey, my name's Mike. I've been asked to come and talk to you about what happened. She can be like, have you heard anything about Finn or Oliver? And then he needs to say, actually respond directly to that. I've heard you've been asking about them. You know, let's talk about them in 1 second. I want to make sure you're okay first.
Hmm.
How are you feeling? Have her describe how she's feeling for a minute. You know, how are just quick, short, tight, guarded responses.
Hmm.
And then express internally that uncertainty about him.
Hmm.
And then he can be like, you've been through something really traumatic. This was a big event. You know, it can have emotional impact. You
Hmm.
know, so physically you seem to be healing okay, but you know, I'm here to make sure that there's not anything you need to talk about emotionally or anything you want to process, right? Like, and then
Hmm.
let her be like, have a sentence run through her head of like, you know, I'm not opening up to this. I don't even know who this guy is. I'm not opening up to him right away. And she can be like, you know, I really just want to find my friends. And then we can get to this like, he drops some pretty heavy stuff on her here, and we need to slow this down as well, right? Like,
Mm.
um, the consultant wants to keep you until this afternoon for observation, but she thinks you'll be fine. Is there anyone we can call to come help you home? Not really. I would have said Finn. I blinked away a tear. Mike nodded solemnly. I see. Do you know what happened? So, and I'm putting this on the same line because it's all Mike.
Hmm.
I don't remember much. My voice cracked and reached. This is all great. Passed it to me. So I'm just skipping down a little bit. She says, but then it's all blank until I woke up in the rubble. I see. Mike nodded and leaned forward, propping his knees. So again, if he's more empathetic and he's honestly there to help her, he needs to respond emotionally to what she just said.
Okay.
This is part of what's making him see sinister is he's like gathering information. It's like,
Yeah.
who's this dude who closed the curtain and is sitting in my bed and doesn't seem to give a crap about me, but he's just gathering information about me, right? Like Oliver was working late, came in while we were there, but then it's all blank until I woke up in the rubble. That sounds terrible,
Hmm.
right? That's, you know, it's awful that you can't remember. That must be really hard. With some reflective, empathetic statement where he's acknowledging her pain and then
Hmm.
moving the conversation forward. The body language is good. Michael leaned forward, propping his elbows on his knees. The lean forward shows engagement. It's great. Um, let her respond. He's going to wait for her to respond before he starts giving her more information.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Um, yeah, a weird thing, because I used to be one of these guys, I can tell you a weird thing about clergy in hospitals is you really have nothing but time.
Hmm.
So you're not in any hurry when you talk to anybody. You're not like the doctors where you're like, I gotta go see the next patient. You're
Yeah.
literally there for like, I have a 12-hour shift, I have an 8-hour shift, and I'm just here to hang out with people. So decrease the urgency for him. He doesn't have that like physician's need to like get to the next patient.
Hmm.
Nobody's like waiting for him to show up. He's got nowhere else to be. So there'll need to be an investigation. So I would have her prompt him when it comes to details. She'd be
Okay.
like, is there anything you can tell me? Like, what's going on?
Hmm.
And then he can be like, well, there'll need to be an investigation to figure out what happened to the building, but it somehow collapsed while you were in there. Right. Like, and then here we need to signpost again before he's like, by the way, your friends are dead.
Yeah.
So collapse while you were in there. There, an extensive rescue was carried out, period. And I have some bad news for you. Right. Or,
Hmm.
and this is going to be really hard. He needs to signpost empathetically to prepare her emotionally before he says his,
Hmm.
they're not coming back. Now, the directness of they're they're dead is good. Um, like him just saying it and not holding on to it for some big reveal is good and realistic. We like people in this circumstance are trained to use the word dead. So if you
Right.
really want to feel if you really want it to feel realistic, he needs to remove all hope. And
Mm.
that's that they're going to live,
Oof.
and that's important because you don't want her being like, what do you mean their lives couldn't be saved? What does that mean? Right? Like, because people, the bad clergy slash emergency responders here will be like, there wasn't anything we could do. And then you
Mm.
have to have a conversation like, what do you mean there wasn't anything you could do? What does that mean? Because the person talking, so you're doing a good job here of having him come right at it. But
Hmm.
if you really wanted to be realistic, he needs to go a little bit further, right? But I
Yeah.
wasn't. But I'm afraid Finn and Olive's injuries were severe. Their lives couldn't be saved. They died at such and such time. I'm so
Okay.
sorry, right?
Hmm.
Like just to make it painfully clear that like
Yeah.
this is what happened. And I have to say, delivering that kind of news sucks. It's the worst. But the clearer and more direct you are in his role, the less you have to sit there and clarify for the next 5 minutes. So all that to say, this goes into how competent you want him to seem.
Mm.
If you want him to seem super confident, do it that way. If you want him to seem a little more stumbling, and it goes into what kind of character he is.
Mm.
If he's a character that's going to figure all of this, if he's a character that has knowledge and is going to apply that knowledge to follow her around because he kind of knows what's going on, you want him to seem super competent here.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
he's a character that's going to kind of bumble into her truth and try to help her while he kind of stumbles around her, you want him to seem less competent here. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah.
And so if you want him to seem less competent, I'd extend this conversation, right? Like an extensive search was and rescue was carried out, and there were three of you recovered from the wreckage. But Finn and Oliver's injuries, they were really severe. I'm so sorry. What do you
Hmm.
mean you're sorry? Well, I mean, it was the doctors worked really hard, but there wasn't anything they could do. What do you mean? What are you talking about? What do you mean there wasn't anything they can do? What are they dead? What happened? And then you can say, yeah, I'm sorry they didn't make it, or they're not with us anymore. These did they go home? What do you mean they're not with us anymore? Did Elliot come to get them? Right, like so you can see how like you're building his in. If you want him to be more of a bumbling figure, build his incompetence here because it'll give the reader a feeling about who he is. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm because I Discovery, right? I'm not sure yet. Like
Yeah.
I'm figuring that out. There is She is gonna have another ally who is definitely competent, confident, knows exactly what's going on. So maybe for contrast,
Yeah.
Mike needs to be the more bumbling, clumsy.
Yeah. And what I might do is I might just mark it, like highlight it, leave myself a note that's like, this is his introduction. Whoever he becomes as I write, I need to come back here and make that,
Mm,
set that up because this
yeah.
is the place where his characterization needs to be set up.
Hmm.
Okay, I want to back up for a second. We talked a little bit about her being guarded and there being kind of a center of frustration
Hmm.
around like that's none of your business. I need that right here,
Yeah.
right? Now like we can get to his questions now. I understand you have no family, reaction,
Hmm.
right? How does he know that? That's none of his business,
Hmm.
right? Like internal reaction.
Yeah.
And then she can say, right. But the reader needs to know how she feels about that. Right
Hmm.
now, she's coming off as kind of like, this is a mundane fact that's been true for most of my life, and I'm tired of people bringing it up. We
Hmm.
need the more like visceral, like, I don't want to talk to you. That's none of your business. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? Now, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be external, but it has to be internal. She has to let the reader know how she feels about it.
Hmm.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so this is another place where we need to sit in it for a little bit. Uh, I see Mike lean forward, probably his elbow. We read that. Oh, so this is the death, right?
Hmm.
I need her response to this more. He just told her, your boyfriend's dead.
Hmm.
So she needs to kind of, unless, so there, again, there's always multiple ways you can go. If she has a weird sense of calm because part of her knows that she actually did it, then let's comment on that.
Mm.
Have her inner comment on like, why isn't she more upset about this?
Mm.
If she doesn't have that, and this is going to be a real traumatic event that kind of haunts her, which is common in a lot of urban fantasies, like, I can't trust my wolf because I killed my boyfriend the first time I turned into a wolf,
Hmm.
then we need her to be more haunted here. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Because
Hmm.
again, you're kind of setting up who she's going to become
Hmm.
either way. So, like, their lives couldn't be saved. I know deep down this is why he was there. Silent tears fell, and all I could do was nod mutely. I need like if she's struggling here, I need like three or four more sentences.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because I'm number three empathy and Clifton strengths. So I don't need all that. I
Yeah.
only need the silent tears fell. And from that, my empathy extrapolates everything that she's feeling.
That's really funny.
And I forget that other people need more.
Other people need more. And other people need more, partially too, the image in these big emotional moments. You have all of this context in your brain, especially as an empathy writer, because you're living this moment a little bit as you write it.
Yeah.
Your readers are not living this moment yet.
Yeah.
And so you have to give them all of that empathy that you have. You have to pour that into this moment.
Hmm.
Um, because this is a big payoff moment. Like in this moment, working and showing her devastated or showing her not devastated and confused is an important
Hmm.
thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's important because it takes the reader on an emotional journey, but it's also important because you're establishing for us who Scarlet is. This is her first real conversation,
Mm.
right? Like, and who she is in this conversation is setting up that kind of like world before.
Mm.
So that's what we need to know here is the world before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need that big emotional response. We need the priest to respond. She needs to respond again. The priest needs to respond again. And he needs to be saying things like, um, again, if he's super confident, if he's super competent, he's not going to say sorry because that pushes people away from you. So if he's super competent, he's going to say things like, I can't imagine what you're going through right now. He's going
Hmm.
to say like, this is really difficult news. It's okay to feel however you're feeling. He's going to say like, he's not he's if he's super competent, he's not going to say it's going to be okay. He's not going to say everything will be all right. He's not going to say, you know let's see what I can do for you. He's just going to let her sit in her emotion, right?
Mm.
If he's more bumbling, he's going to say all of those things, and you probably want a response from her, right?
Mm.
He's going to touch her shoulder and be like, it's okay, it's going to be all right. And the response of anybody who's just lost somebody, you say it's okay, it'll be all right, is, what the fuck do you know? Right? Like, it's not gonna be all right. He's dead. So like that, you'll want to have that moment.
Mm.
Well, if it's internal, it shows that she holds emotions in and doesn't say them out loud.
Hmm.
If her internal response is like, it's not gonna be all right, I loved him and he's dead, asshole. Thanks. Right? That shows that she's holding it internally and
Mm.
that she's somehow repressed a little bit. If she lashes out, it shows that she has kind of this mechanism in her that cares less about perception. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah,
So the way that
absolutely.
conversation rolls tells us about who she is. Um, yeah, I think I've beat that horse to death. Is it dead? I think it's dead. Um, then after all of that moment, she can switch to Elliot.
Hmm.
She has to have that whole moment before she moves to Elliot.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Again, more here, right? Like a serious conversation. It's very sparse, right? Poor Elliot. She's thinking about losing both of his brothers. Again, she has to mourn before she can mourn for somebody else. Is there a friend I can call for you? Mike offered. That's a weird, like, he doesn't signpost anything. He doesn't like say why.
Okay.
He needs to be like, so the doctors say you're okay to get out of here. You can stay as long as you want. That's the common phrase that they say. You can stay as long as you want, as long as you need to. At the same time, you don't have to be here in this hospital anymore. We can get you home. What do you want to do? And some hospitals are never going to say as long as you want. They'll say like you can stay a little longer if you need to.
Yeah, that's we have the NHS. Like
Okay, so yeah, it's a little different there.
they get you out as
Yeah.
quickly as possible.
So you could probably have him say like you could like to signpost that you can be like, hey, you can stay another minute or like you can stay a little bit longer if you need to. At the same time, you're cleared to go home.
Hmm.
So how can I help you get home?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but just a little more of a transition here
Hmm.
to get to the practical. She doesn't actually have a concussion. I might comment on that here, right? They'll be nearby. I'll find out for you. If you need to talk or anything, remember, I'll talk to you. Thanks. I turned my head and blew my nose. That was actually what made me be like, okay, we got to talk about concussion because blowing your nose with a real concussion, like a real serious concussion, oh my gosh, this blew your brain out of your head. I didn't want to talk to you. I didn't want to talk. I want my clothes to get out of there. Mike slipped away quietly, leaving the curtain. I might put something in here about like the doctors have cleared you to go. They said you have a mild concussion. You seem to be doing pretty well. And then
Hmm.
let her comment on like, I'm it, besides the memory lapse, it wasn't as if I could like everything seemed fine. Like let her
Mm.
comment that internally, and then we can continue on with the conversation.
Yeah.
Just the stress, and again, it's a hard thing with readers, and I don't know if this is a modern day problem or an always problem, but readers tend to assume we don't know what we're doing, and so make sure they know, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that she's not acting like she has a concussion. Like, just gotta pull that in here at some point to be like, look, guys, I know. Don't assume I don't know what a concussion is. I know what a concussion is. I know she feels like she doesn't have one. Um, yeah, so here I didn't know how I would bear another loss so soon after my family member had passed away. I'd lived with my grandmother since I was 6, and she just died a month previously. Finn had been my rock through that, but now he was gone too. So with this summary paragraph, you've made a transition. At the opening of the piece, you were really great with the like how she's feeling physically, and then I wanted more emotion. Here, you've removed the physicality and the emotion altogether, and she's just in a logic center.
Mm.
So I need more physical impact as she's thinking about this.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
On the extreme, you'll give her a mild panic attack as she starts to think about this. Um,
Hmm.
on more likely for the character that you're writing, she's gonna have some kind of like having to swallow her feelings. Right. I sat
Hmm.
there alone and listened to soft footfalls on the lonely floor, medications to patients, BB machines, the swish of doors, regular intervals. And then here's like, um, I couldn't help I could feel in my chest that old pain building up, that sense of loss and grief that had come so often. I pushed it down like I always did, shoving
Hmm.
it into my gut where I couldn't feel it anymore, but I couldn't help the tears fall. Does that make sense? Like it's that
Yeah.
like give me a little more about what's happening internally with her as she discusses that her entire family is dead. So like that kind of like, yeah.
Mm.
And I also want to know that she's used to this. She's used to this kind of feeling.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another moment where the two of I want to know more about the two of them. A nurse came to check on me and seemed satisfied. Soon after, Mike returned with a clear plastic bag containing my things, which he passed to me with a pitying look. How does she feel about that? She's somebody who's experienced a massive amount of grief.
Hmm.
She's experienced a lot of loss. How does she feel about somebody looking at her with pity?
Mm. Mm. Like she's sort of frustrated by it and just like, I don't like, don't look at me like that. That's like, I don't need your pity.
I
That's sort
need
of
that.
defensive.
And again, she's
Yeah.
guarded, so she's not going to say externally, but she's going to say it to
No.
the reader, right?
Yeah.
Like a pitying look. I hated that look. Right?
Hmm.
I wanted to punch that look off of his small stupid face. That's too aggressive for her, but like I
Yeah.
hated that look. I hated it when people gave it to me. When so and so died, I hated it when people gave it to me when this person died, and I hate it now. Right? Like something that like gives us that emotional connection to that look.
Hmm.
Um, him following her, so this is written really well. I just want somewhere in here her to note that it's weird that he's hovering all the way into the cab. Does that make sense? And he might
Yeah.
he might chalk it up to concussion protocol.
Mm.
Like I actually this was really funny to me because again, as somebody who's done like hospital duty as clergy, you don't have anything to do. So just like walking around with people is kind of what you do. You're like, yeah, I'll just follow you to your cab. But people always comment on stuff like this. They're like, you don't
Hmm.
have to follow me. No, no, no. I want to make sure you get home okay. No,
Yeah.
really. Like, Pastor, it's okay. You don't have to take me to the cab. You know what? It's no big deal. I don't have anywhere else to go. So to make sure you get this. So
Yeah.
we need some kind of thing in here where where she's like, this is weird that you're standing in the elevator in silence with me. Right. Like, so some
Yeah.
kind of small,
Okay.
you need a little small talk in here. Um, it's also would be a good place where he's like, I've seen a lot of people with concussions. You're recovering really well. That's great. Like try to give her a little hope. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So then we move into this last section of her and Elliot, um, where she gets home and Elliot addresses her, and you're doing a good job with her surprise that Elliot's there.
Hmm.
She doesn't seem to want to mourn with him though.
No.
Why not?
Um, Part of it, she's exhausted. She hasn't slept, and she just needs to be on her own.
Okay.
Um, but I did want there to be a little distance between them, and to give the suggestion to the reader that we can't entirely trust him.
Great. Yeah, that's good. And I think the distance is there. I need the emotion and the lack of trust stronger. And the lack of trust probably needs to come around Finn's relationship with him
Mm.
because she's going to see him through Finn's eyes because that's her
Hmm.
boyfriend. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
or at least interpret him through how Finn has interpreted him. So, like, I don't know if I have a concussion. I don't remember much. I pull my keys out of my bag as we approach the cottage. Right here, I want a like I wanted exhaustion waves of exhaustion were falling over me. There was nothing I wanted more than to lay down and go to sleep.
Hmm.
Is that what a concussion feels like? I don't know, right? Like some kind of like commentary on why. His car
Hmm.
was parked in front of the house, and I looked from it to him. He was wearing a white shirt and sleeves rolled up, was covered in dirt. He was in the same clothes he'd been wearing when he arrived at Aurora Court. I looked down at my own disheveled appearance. Somewhere in here, I need a comment on her relationship with him based on Finn, right?
Hmm.
I was shocked he was here at all. Finn hadn't seen him for more, Finn always talked about him as his absent brother, or, now he cares, even though he and Finn hated each other. Like for somebody who hated Finn, there's a lot of stuff going on
They
here.
they
Or
didn't though. They had a good
oh
relationship.
no, I'm just throwing out random things, right?
Okay.
Like, yeah, I'm just, but I need some kind of like connection to him here
Hmm.
to know why she wouldn't fully trust him. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
Some kind of bringing me into their past relationship with a sentence that
Mm,
tells me why she doesn't want to mourn and talk with him.
mm,
Um, when he drops that they were mauled, she needs more,
yeah.
right? Neither do I, but I saw them. I had to identify them. They were. He stalled, his face growing ever paler. Great. What? I asked, my nerves twisting my stomach and not. Great. Mauled. People who are guarded, and this is something you may just want to think about it with her voice. People who are guarded have internal response first and then external
Hmm.
because they have the internal response, they have to gather it, and then they have the external response.
Yeah.
So for her, mauled, how does she feel about that word? That doesn't make any sense. I shook my head. This couldn't be real. I reached in the blank space of my memory. Does that make sense? So like
Yeah.
something here that gives me her response to mauled.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think I had her respond straight away as a sort of buying time
Yeah,
while she processes what she thinks.
and that's great, but we need the internal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you then have here where she recalls the memory.
Hmm.
It just kind of all flows out of her right now. Part of me wants this to be like, and again, with all of these, we're making choices about who our character is and how the reader is going to see them.
Hmm.
Part of me wants this to come to her internally as Elliot grills her.
Mm,
But it all depends on who you want Elliot to be, right?
mm,
Like if Elliot's going to be more of an antagonist to her, then we want him saying things like, the space. Something I could refute was what Elliot was saying. I couldn't let it be true. You don't remember anything that happened. In quotes, I don't. Finn and I had been kissing in front of the mural. Oliver walked on the opposite side of us. It was slightly awkward. Laughter before the two of them started knocking about and banter. There has to be something. There has to be some kind of clue you can give me. I d- Exhaustion washed over me. I don't remember anything. There was a tarpon across the wall that wasn't finished yet. It was starting to come back to me, right? The great glass ceiling, planned to be a grand Gaza, a wind of blue, tarp blew the midnight. Like Scarlet, right? We need to know what happened. Buildings don't just fall down, right? Like, so do you see how I'm like
mm,
using
mm.
him to pace her recall?
Yeah.
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 It makes him more sinister
Hmm.
because what that communicates is I don't care about your physical well-being right now. I care about getting information about what happened to my brother. Right?
Hmm.
Like, so it all depends on how you want him. If they're going to be like a love relationship and she's going to take up a relationship with Elliot, then here you want him coming off more sympathetic.
That isn't the plan, but basically he's going to be accused of um
Yeah,
causing the
causing everything.
incident,
Yeah,
and she sets out to clear his name.
gotcha.
So, but I want the reader to think that he might be the werewolf. So it's that I need her
Gotcha.
to, she she needs to come to trust him and be rooting for him while the reader is going, no.
Yeah. So here we need him grilling her a little bit and her slowly recalling and feeling bad that she can't tell him more.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? But we need to
Yeah.
take this paragraph and really build it out.
Hmm.
Um, because it is a big revelation moment, and these are two main characters that are having that we're establishing their relationship. Like again, first chapter, you're establishing all these characters for the first time.
Hmm.
Um, I think the wrap is good. I didn't have any notes for the end of it. I thought it was you end it well. I like bring back the idea, the word mauled. I think you hit well here at the end. Yes, it's a strong I'd turn the page to the next chapter. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Um, yeah, I just any if you have any more suggestions of how to misdirect the reader, like because it's I think that's what I struggled with this chapter, and I think that
Yeah.
shows.
So when you're in first person POV and misdirection, and you have limited perspective,
Mm,
we know what she knows.
hmm
So misdirection is about assumptions she's making
hmm
and about how she feels about people. And so part of what's going to make the misdirection, like, if you want the priest to feel sinister, you do a good job starting that up of like him closing the curtain and isolating the two of them.
hmm
But we need her to feel more uneasy and nervous talking to him.
hmm
And that's going to set up misdirection there. If you want, like you're saying, misdirection around Elliot, we need him more aggressive here, and we need her being taken aback by his aggression. The
mm,
reader's on the journey with her, so they're going to model how she feels about things. So
yeah.
you need her misdirected, and then we'll be misdirected.
hmm
Does that make sense? And she
Yeah.
doesn't need to be misdirected logically, where she's like, did Elliot do it? We don't need that. That's going to
Mm,
feel trite to the
hmm
reader. We need her being misdirected emotionally, right?
hmm
Why is he being so aggressive to me? Right? Like, I just want to go inside. I just need to get away from him. I just need to, right? So we need to build out his intensity and then have that intensity impact her emotionally. And then the reader's going to be like, oh, he's a bad dude,
hmm
right? Or if you want to go the route where she feels bad for him and he's intense, then before she goes inside, we need more of a connection between them.
mm,
Bring out this memory where he's being aggressive. Have him do this, like, what do you remember, Holly? He asks softly. Nothing. Honestly, it's a blur. I touched the back of my head where blood was crusted in the ginger. It turned out to be perfectly superficial. They hadn't even stinched it. And then he's like, he kind of wraps it here. We need a connection between them where she says something like, because she ends it here, yeah, I must have been a deep frown creased in my brow. I didn't remember an explosion. Look, Elliot, I need to get cleaned up. So do you. Go home and get some rest. We'll catch up later. She's kind of annoyed with him here.
hmm
If you want to pull the reader into him so that you're giving a misdirective, like she wants to help him and she cares about him, and she's going to end up being the villain. She doesn't know it. Like, so if you want him to feel villainous, have him leave this conversation frustrated. If you want her to ally with him to try to help him, to increase the pain later when she realizes she's the victim and there's actually nothing she's the villain and there's nothing she can do to help him, the best thing she can do is blame it on him. If you want that to happen, then give them a deep connection here,
mm,
right? You're
yeah.
right. He looked over at himself and swiped his hand over his face. I'm a mess. Not which is understandable. I can't believe Finn is gone, right?
Mm,
Let a tear come out of his eye. Let him like struggle to get some emotion.
hmm
Let her reach out and take his arm and let him say something kind about Finn
hmm
and their relationship. I didn't even get to talk to him. I just want I just want to know what his last moment was like.
mm,
And her being like, I'm sorry, I can't help, or have her feel really bad about it.
mm,
And then have him be like, you're right. Go get cleaned up. I'll come by tomorrow. Right? Like that establishes that emotional connection here at the end so that
mm,
as now you've misdirected the reader to think they're allies with each other,
hmm
right? And they're in this together to figure out what happened. And that's
Yeah.
what when it comes to like misdirecting, it's all about how she feels about these people in her limited perspective.
Mm,
Yeah. So when you
yeah.
bring the revelation of she's the problem, that really needs to hit her
Mm,
really hard, right?
yeah.
Because how it hits her is how it's going to hit the reader.
hmm
Yeah. Does that
Yeah.
help?
Yeah, it does definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, yeah. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, great. I'm gonna hit stop and we can talk a little bit more. Maybe I'm gonna hit stop. There we go.